Marry me, Annie here. I thought I'd share something with you. Those of you who follow me elsewhere know that we started a little something in the area where I live that's called a covenant group, the Goddess Within covenant group, to be specific. A gathering of women to honor the goddess without as well as the goddess within. And we started out our first gathering. We'll be meeting once a month with something I put together a long time ago, actually. I've used a couple of times with mixed groups. We are not necessarily pagan women. In fact, only 2 of us are out of the 30 or so women involved. It's about exploring the feminine and divine together. But I put this together, 10 or more years ago. Had the opportunity to use it a couple of times with mixed groups, and I actually thought it might be something that some of you would enjoy, so I thought to share it here. This is the story of the 2 Heras. Now, if you happen to be a devotee of Hera, as I start to share, keep in mind 2 stories. You'll probably align more powerfully with the second of the 2. I hope you enjoy this. And after the stories have been told, a couple things I'm going to offer for you to ponder. I am the goddess Hera. You may know me through the stories they tell of me. They taught me to you in stories of classic mythology, in books on Greek mythology. You probably heard my name when you were in school. You may have read of me on your own. Here's what you most likely will have heard about me. This is my story. I am the supreme of all Olympian goddesses, the matron of marriage and of childbirth. You've seen images of me, regal, seductive, sitting separate from you on a mighty throne. If you wish to approach me, do so carefully, for I may not be in the mood to humor you. I am eternal in my beauty, presenting to you the one, the only true face of the goddess, she who must be obeyed. Neither young nor old, for what is the power of either of those? The young are insipid, the elderly boring. I'm at the prime of my life, for isn't that the only time we hold our woman's power? When I was young, my beauty tempted the great god Zeus. He courted me, but I remained uninterested. And then the sneaky son of a gun took the shape of a bedraggled cuckoo. I felt sorry for it. I took it to my breast to comfort it, not knowing it was him. My reward? Zeus took his true form, and he raped me. I was in such great shame at what had happened that I married him to save face, to preserve my good and elevated name. This is what we women must do, save face at all costs. Don't you agree? But it was a rough and a rocky experience, that marriage. The old man lost his infatuation with me before long, and he took to roving. Young and beautiful women constantly capturing his attention and his body. In my anger, I convinced the other gods to align with me and challenge Zeus's dominion, for he lorded it not only over me, but over all of the gods of Olympus. Let's say that didn't work out very well, and none of us ever dared challenge him directly again. Let that be another lesson to you. Women, don't challenge the authority in your lives. But I had my ways of getting even. I had my ways. Woe to any woman who caught Zeus's wandering eye. My revenge was hot, and I remained the only constant of the women in his life. If I could not harm the women, there was always their offspring to go after. And through it all, I remained loyal to him, no matter his infidelities, showing all good women the importance of devotion to the man in our life, no matter the challenge to our marriages. Devotion above all else, at any cost, to the king. I do not know the meaning of the words forgiveness or understanding. In defense of my marriage to Zeus, I killed, maimed, and turned into animals those that dared set their sights upon him. And I was very creative about that, if I may say so. If I could not directly affect them, the answer was easy. Just go after their offspring. It's true that in my great rage, I often harmed those who actually had done me no harm. Small thing, just casualties in my war to retain the interest of Zeus. For if I lost my connection to the most powerful of our gods, then my own power would fade. Mind you well. Align yourself to the powerful, therein lies your power. And it's not just about my conflicts with Zeus's women. Woe to the man who crosses me, who dares challenge me. All the anger I hold for Zeus, but cannot express directly, I will focus on the men who rub me the wrong way. Zeus had his thunderbolt. I have the power of frustration and jealousy fueling me. Revenge is my greatest power. Thunderbolts, not needed. We'll leave that to my husband. I succeed in other devious and very well calculated ways. There is a poem written about me that tells my story clearly. And it goes, I am Hera, the feminine of hero, and I am indeed a heroine, married beyond my will. I was content and happy until he came and ravished me. He implored me, begged me, seduced me into marrying him, to become queen of Olympus, to sit on the golden throne next to him. My pride is well known. I succumbed to the glory of ruling. 300 years we mated. We gloried under the canopy of love. Then his wantonness arose. He mated nymphs, goddesses, and mortals. I bore him 3 children, Ares, Hephaestus, and Hebe. He humiliated and dishonored me in every way he could. Our marriage was disavowed. My heart was broken. I took revenge. My rage knew no end. I decree you remember me this way. I am the goddess Hera. You may know me through the true stories of my origin, long before the stories that you've just heard from one who claims to speak the truth about us. Many generations before Zeus was known in Greece, the people there worshipped me by a name that's been lost to time. Hera, as you know me, was a term of honor I was given. Our Lady. This other woman, this imposter, doesn't even know our true name. I am the ruler of the earth and its dwellers, and have a role, my favorite, as the matron of women and their sexuality. I'm also the queen of the sky and the stars in heaven. I rule alone, needing no king, no consort. I am not the queen, elevated and beyond human touch and understanding. I am revered for the way I use my power. It comes from a place of love. I am beloved. I am not feared. Like my sisters on earth, I passed through 3 life stages: youth, maturity, and age. I am the virgin who is free of responsibility to others. In my youthful appearance, I am known as the flower, the symbol of human youth and the budding of the earth in spring. In my mature appearance, I am known as the perfect one. I am then as the summer, in the prime of my life, and extremely giving to others, including giving life to my children. In my third appearance, I am the old one, full of life experience and wisdom, choosing to live again by myself. No matter the stage in my life, I never had a consort. I am woman whole unto herself, thriving, most especially in the seasons of autumn and winter. I am the only one of the old gods who stood by a woman through the length of her life. I am old now. I have seen much, but within me is contained my young self and the self of the prime of my life. We can never be separated. Aren't you as I, dear sisters, the sum of all the years of your living? There is sadness to my story, though. It follows on the generations of my loving worship. You may know that around 1000 BCE, tribes from the north descended into my lands, bringing with them their sky god, Zeus. My presence in the land they invaded, especially the aspect of me that rules over the heavens, one of my names is Queen of the Heavens, was a threat to those invading armies and their Zeus. Because my religion was too strong to utterly destroy, a marriage of convenience was forged between me and Zeus. That wasn't anything new. It was not unusual for pre-Hellenic goddesses like myself to be usurped by new male gods. We were murdered, raped, and forced into relationship to the arriving war-bearing male gods. My celebrations began to fade, most especially the honoring of my proud and strong young self and my giving and loving, mothering self. Those 2 aspects of who I am disappeared into history, but they could not destroy every vestige of my earlier independence and strength. No matter the evolution of my mythology and my subjugation to Zeus, my rituals continued to permit me to retreat annually at the time of autumn and into winter. That had always been the time of my power as the prophetic crone, the distinguished wise one, the woman alone. They could not take that away from me. They could not take that away from the woman who adored me. They cannot take that away from us, dear ones. And to you, my sister Hera, who came in the time after the arrival of Zeus, may I remind you of the ending of the poem you shared, which left you asking us to honor you for your capacity for rage and revenge. That poem ends with, "Till one day I left and went home to Evia to live in solitude. I took myself back intact. And when I returned, I ruled in a whole new way because I first ruled myself. I ask that you remember each of us this way, sisters, you and me, and even she who claims to be me. She contains aspects of myself that I am not proud of, but who are very much a part of me. First, sisters, we rule ourselves, maiden, mother, and old one, whole and perfect, beholding to no one. We are pure and true and unique in our individual beauty. We are, together, queens of heaven and earth. The two stories of Hera. They're about the evolution of a particular goddess, but many more over time. They're in great part about who told her story and in what time, within what construct of man, what culture, what community. A little bit more about the goddess, who was Hera. She was worshipped throughout Greece, and some, if not all, of the oldest temples in Greece were dedicated to her. The first temple to her, which can be proven, is at Samos in Greek, built about 800 BCE. There's some before that, but this one can be proven to be hers. Her importance in the early period is attested to by the large building projects undertaken in her honor. Relics have been found from hundreds of years prior which have been connected to her earlier worship. Some contemporary research considers the possibility that Hera was originally the goddess of a matriarchal people prior to the Hellenic people, prior to the Hellenic period. Regardless of whether that will ever be proven or disproven, some of her symbols, the snake, the lion, and water birds, tie her to more ancient centers of worship in Minoa and Crete, specifically to the snake goddess of the Mediterranean. While later connected to the thunder god Zeus, Hera's first temple in Olympia was dedicated much earlier than the one to him, demonstrating her greater importance in a time when she was the chief deity before the arrival of the invading tribes from the north who brought their thunder god with them, approximately 300 BCE. To this date, the Olympic torch, which is carried to the host country of contemporary Olympics, is lit at the ruins of Hera's temple. At the height of her worship and in her underground worship after the arrival of Zeus, she was connected to the three stages of a woman's life: maiden, mother, and crone. Also referred to in her worship as the phases of the girl, the fulfilled one, and the separated one. She was also aligned to the phases of the moon, representing those aspects. She was venerated at many sites in Greece, particularly in Crete and Samos, but the center of her worship was at Argos. On Samos, the sanctuary built for Hera was never exceeded in size by any temple in Greece. In the early classical period after her forced marriage, she still maintained her position as a chief deity, if not the chief deity. Sculptures and frescoes in the temples at the time showed her in a not dominant position over Zeus, standing while he sits or kneels before her. In the involvement of the classical period, her story becomes one of the vindictive and shrewish wife, and images of her and Zeus show him standing and her in the lesser position. Hera was indigenous and represents a matrilineal system. She reigned alone at Argos and at Samos. As the conquering northerners passed into Thessaly after the fashion of a conquering chieftain, Zeus marries Hera, a daughter of the land. In Olympos, Hera seems merely the jealous and quarrelsome wife. In reality, she reflects the turbulent native goddess, coerced but never really subdued by an alien conqueror. I will list the sources for that little bit of history of Hera for you below. A lot of it's open to debate, my friends. Time may reveal more secrets of her true history. She may remain equally as clothed in mystery. Why is this consideration of the two stories of Hera something I wanted to bring to you? We do our best to understand and relate to the gods of other times and other places. We do have a responsibility, I say, to seek out the oldest teachings, wisdoms, and appearances of the gods we choose to revere. Perhaps not to be so willing to accept their stories as rewritten by others as time moved on. It puts us in an odd spot, because how can we really know who they were, for example, before the classical period, when it comes to a goddess like Hera? How can we know the ancient gods of any land in their true indigenous and powerful form? How can we know how they were worshipped, how they were part of the everyday living within their culture and their time? But if we don't assume, if we read, if we study, if we have a questing mind, we will encounter each of our God's oldest, most true selves. And in that process, we will find things in the rewritten story that we relate to, that we need, that are very much a part of how we relate to them. There are times I relate to each of the two Heras, but at her most basic, at who she is, that inspires me, encourages me to either be like her or to acknowledge the parts of me that are. It's the older Hera, and the one whose story was told before it was being told by others. So there's a big reason for me to have brought the concept of the two Heras here to my YouTube channel, to encourage us all to learn everything we can about the gods we choose to revere, to understand what of their contemporary and what of their ancient and what of their possibly most ancient realities inspire us. It's also, remember, this was a sharing in a woman's group, an important opportunity to spend time thinking about our own stories. When have we let, like the new Hera, someone else tell our story? Someone else decide who we are, to pronounce that to the world, and also expect that we would embrace their telling of who we are. One of the lessons of the two Heras is the power of telling our own story, living our own truth, speaking that truth into the world, and acting aligned to that. To stand up when somebody's telling our story, to deny their version of us. One of the greatest teachings to me in the time I've spent with Hera has been to spend time thinking of the times someone else has told my story, simple things, sometimes powerful and life-changing things. Let me give you an example. The young Annie. Plain and chubby, socially backward, withdrawn. Oh, but she was so good in school. Teacher's pet. Loved to study. In fact, he always found her with a nose in the book. However, there was a story that Annie's family told about her, And that story was, it was a good thing that young Annie was going to be smart because she was too fat and too plain to ever attract herself a man. Young Annie believed in that story that was told about her. That's who she thought she was, until a certain point in her life, when she began to understand who she was and she began speaking her own story. Sometimes someone tells your story in a way that is good for you to live up to. The story I was told by my grandmothers about what a wonderful child I was and how worthy of love. That's a story that I first had to believe because someone else said it. And then I could tell it because I truly believed it as my own story. That's one of the reasons why Goddess called out to me. She told me a story about myself. I believed it. And I felt totally and truly loved. Exploring the history, the true history of any of the gods we choose to honor. And the opportunity that this one teaches in this moment, perhaps, to think about who tells our own story and the power of standing up and telling our truth, telling our own story. The tale of the two Heras. I wish you all mirth and reverence. Merry part.